So, not a mystery topic and not the way I normally would film something like this, but I really don't think it's going to take too much time to do it. You know, people are trying to poke holes in it, but it's the ancient way of thinking. Anybody who thinks along these lines are just doing it out of ignorance because they haven't looked into it. You got to check. Things have changed a lot in the past 2 years. The cost of parts and the scarcity isn't there. But there's an overwhelming amount of parts all over the market. As a matter of fact, I would say that not only do you get better results, but it might even be the same price or cheaper to do a fucking K at this point than it is to do a fucking B series, just because there's so many readily available, and the B series shit is actually getting harder and harder to find, and people are taxing on that shit because of it now. You can't find a fucking GSR long block for the same price you would find a fucking K20A2 or a K24A2, right? So the list I made, I bet $800 for a long block and $350 for a trans. Now people want to argue, oh, but it's a 5-speed trans. Who gives a shit? It's still a transmission. You're gonna tell me that you wouldn't use an LS transmission to put a B swap in your car unless you're doing boost? That's a rule that you're making up. That's a preference that you have. But we're not talking about the preferences you have on how you want to do the swap. We're talking about the overall cost of what it takes to put a swap in the car. All right, I have a base model right now. You know there's nothing wrong with that. When I swap out, if I stay in A in the RSX, I'm not swapping the transmission out. So why do you automatically have to swap the transmission out for an older generation car? You don't have to. Personal preference. So that takes away from that argument right there. So $800 for a long block, you know, and $350 for a trans. As a matter of fact, that trans averages on average is less than a fucking B series transmission. All right. And then so you go talk about like the rest of those. It was all about the mounts. You can buy a generic mount kit for $170. Okay, if you go on like that's not a regular price. Okay, so $185 to $190 all day that those swap mounts exist. Now you need the fucking conversion harness to get it to work in your car. The conversion harness, the adapter conversion harness is $100 for a generic one, right? And now you need the fuel lines because you get the way the fuel return system works is different for the K than it is for the older one. Okay, so a generic one is like $260, right? So this is all you need to put that swap in the car. Now then they're like, oh, well, you didn't list the price of the axle, you don't list the price of fucking the engine harness, you don't list the price of the shifters. All of those prices are the same exact prices that you're gonna have to pay for a B or even a D series. Engine harness, $100. B series, D series, same thing, same price all day. Shift link is a shifter box, right? That's the cables and shifter box. $50 to $80, $100. That's the same price you're gonna pay for shift linkage for a D or a B. $50, $80, $100. That's the regular price. The only price that's different is the fucking ECU. That's it. And then somebody wanted to argue earlier about a tune. You don't need a tune to put a stock fucking A2 or a K24A2 or a K20A2 in your shit. And you're already making plenty more power than any B series is gonna make stock for stock. All you need the ECU for, the K-Pro for, is for the override, just so you can use the key to turn it on. All right. And let's say if you do decide to tune, a couple of fucking cheap ass bolt-ons will make you 200 plus, all motor. If you want to put a cheap eBay turbo kit on it, 500 horsepower, all day without effort. 10-second car, 700 horsepower stock. So and, you know, Humble's been saying this for the longest time. It is by far the cheapest route to go to do a fucking a 10-second car. This is not an argument anymore, guys. You just, and I know I was guilty of it, right? I talk about fucking 4-piston all the time. I ride their nuts. And I say 2-3 years ago, if you would have told me people were making 10-second passes, 9-second passes, 8-second passes on an NAK series, I would have told you out of your fucking mind, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. But that was a couple years ago. That's not the modern day. The swap thing, some of us older guys that are in our later 20s or early 30s, you would say the same thing. Oh, K's expensive. It was a couple years ago. It's not anymore. So, and the prices I listed for the swap conversion are all retail prices. We're not talking about secondhand, and we're not talking about haggling. If somebody posts a fucking engine long block for $800, you can haggle that down a couple $100. Same thing with a transmission. So please come again with an argument of how it's cheaper. Somebody said the same thing to me before. Oh, the K is too expensive. I send it here, same day, and not me asking about the price. The guy posted a long block for $600. They're out there, guys. Just make the second to look. Go on eBay, type K-Swap mounts. Look for it. That's retail price. We're not even talking about secondhand that you can haggle down. Please, again, tell me how the K-Swap's too hard or it's too expensive. It's not. Somebody made the point to talk about earlier, everything for Honda is cheap, all right? And even the expensive shit for Honda is still cheaper than anything else you can do to make a fast car. And then so, but again, of course, because we're talking about Honda specifically versus another swap, it's still the same price. It's still the same price of a B or cheaper. And you're gonna get way better results. Another person commented that the people saying this are people who don't have any mechanical skills. So if you go to a swap, there's a little bit more effort involved, so they're gonna charge you a little more. But if you're doing this shit yourself, it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. And I don't need to actually go out and build a car to show you guys the prices of the parts that are out there. And the only reason why I haven't built a K car yet is because I'm fucking lazy. And right now, I would have already been buying the parts, because this year is the year I'm gonna be building cars. You know, I'm not gonna be building engines anymore. I'm gonna be focused on putting this shit on the track. But I can't do that right now because I'm trying to move. I'm moving into a new house. My next paycheck for one pay period, 100 hours, you know, is gonna be a $2,500 paycheck. So buying everything I need to do the swap would be no problem. But, you know, moving. You'll see what the fuck's going on. But you can go and check the prices yourself. You don't need to wait to see me do it to go. And as far as to talk about, any little prices that pop up during the process of doing the swap, that's the same for any car. That's not specific for K only. All right, guys, go check it out your fucking self. Take 5 minutes on eBay to check the price list, and then go to Facebook and look in the classifieds and check again. It's not fucking expensive. It's all cheap shit.